On this episode of Locked On Lightning, Lightning win big at home in a squeaker against the Vancouver Canucks. Stamkos scores .499. We talk all of that and more, but first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Decker. I want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. On this episode, we're talking about the Lightning winning by the skin of their teeth, where I said at the beginning they won big, still a big win, 5 goals on the night. A little bit of a mental lapse there at the end, which made this game close. And let's start there. So Lightning were pretty much in the process of putting a bow on this game. Going into the third period, Stamkos scores .499 on the power play goal. Shocky, I know. And then we start to see Vancouver claw its way back. And you know, I wouldn't be too upset. I'm not too upset about it at all. Vancouver, even though they are one of the lesser teams, and I said on the previous episode that I thought this was a game that the Lightning should have won, and when they did, and I felt though that, and we always see this, and I've always spoken about this whenever the Lightning play a team that is not necessarily in the picture for the playoffs, and I would be shocked if we're going into the playoffs or near the end of the season, and Vancouver's even remotely in the discussion. But I kind of figured once Stamkos scored, depending on when it was, I thought that if it was early on, we would have seen somewhat of a normal game. But given the fact that it was in the third period, given the fact that it was 5.5 minutes into the third period, it was basically all bets were off. The Lightning were really hustling out there. They were really just doing whatever they could to get Steven Stamkos the puck, and rightfully so, of course, being on the verge of 500 career goals. He had 7 shots in this one, had 2 points. Great night from him. But yeah, the 7 shots, I didn't have a problem with it. I kind of figured that was what was going to happen. I was going to tweet out during the game that I hoped at least that maybe Cooper would have at least rested him for a couple of shifts. And then once Vancouver pulled the goaltender, you would have seen him basically play the entirety of that shift, or the entirety of the time that the goalie was pulled. And obviously we didn't see that because Vancouver continued to come back, scoring 2 unanswered goals to make this a 1-goal margin for the Lightning. And I would chalk that up to 2 things. The Lightning just kind of having a little bit of a mental lapse, because obviously with everything with Stamkos, 500 career goals is nothing to sneeze at. You want to definitely give him every opportunity to get 500 at Amalie before they go on this 5-game road trip, and that coupled with just not really, I would guess more so just Vancouver playing very well, just not stop fighting throughout the course of this game. And I guess 2A or 2B, in this scenario would be Delia, the goaltender for Vancouver. Some of you may recognize him or may remember him from his days in Chicago last year. He gave the Lightning a little bit of a fit in the matchups that they had against the Blackhawks. So no surprise there that we saw a little bit more of the same Delia, who's been in the league for quite some time. Very good goaltender, 30 saves on the night. But yeah, I would guess, if I had to rate this third period, because as I guess flat as the Lightning started in the first period, and make no mistake about it, the Lightning didn't get their first shot off until the 10-minute mark, which, especially coming off the performance they had against Columbus the other night, definitely a 180 from what you would expect uh, from the other night till tonight. But second period, as we've spoken about on past episodes, I thought that the Lightning really did a good job of really starting to separate themselves, and really starting to you really saw the talent come out there, and you really start to see everybody get going in the second period. It's just a matter of consistency with this team playing a full 60-minute game, and we didn't see that tonight. But the Lightning played well enough to get themselves a win. So a good effort all around on the ice. Stamkos got 499, like I said, against a very tough Vancouver Canucks team. We'll see them next week on the road trip, and so I'm sure it'll be just as tough. And I'm also sure we'll see a little bit of more heated exchanges in that last couple of shifts of the game. Connor Garland got whacked in the face, and whack, as I guess, is an understatement, just because of there was a scrum in front of the net in front of Vasilevskiy, and Garland got too close to Vazzy for comfort, and Sergachev, let's face it, let's call it what it is, sucker punched them with the glove on and everything. And surprised that the refs didn't see it. Then again, the refs were terrible the entire game, especially on one of the calls, the missed calls actually, that stands out to me is the fact that when Perry should have drawn the penalty for hooking. I believe it was late in the second, and there was a no call there. And so maybe that was a little bit of a give me back. But call or no call, I would expect the league to look into that and potentially fine Sergachev or even suspend him for a game. So hopefully it's a fine more than a suspension, because especially with this 5-game road trip coming up, you definitely want to have everybody on the ice. You definitely want to have all your defensemen on the ice. And the idea of losing Sergachev on a road trip as important as this one, it's a little scary. But like I said, all around good game. The Lightning played very well. They dominated the puck possession. Their special teams continues to roll. 2 for 3 tonight on the power play. Killed off the penalties for on the PK tonight. Well, actually, no, they gave a power play goal, but I thought other than that, it was a good effort on the power play for the Lightning, the PK for the Lightning tonight. So all around good effort. And yeah, hopefully we can continue to see them bring this effort on Monday, on Saturday against St. Louis Blues, and then into Monday's game against the Red Hot Kraken. So in our second segment coming up, we'll be talking about Andrei Vasilevskiy. Great night from him tonight. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about his 36 saves that he made on the 40 shots that he saw. We talk about all of that. But first, I want to remind you that today's episode of Locked On Lightning is brought to you by BetOnline. Now, BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, and news and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college sports to basketball and the NHL. I'm curious as to, and it's funny, I'm curious as to how many people, at what point in the national championship game a couple of days ago, Georgia playing TSU, at what point did you turn it off? I believe I turned it off at 28-7 Georgia, which I believe was still the first quarter. But yeah, definitely bet money on Stamkos to score a goal every single night. Definitely bet money on Point and Kucherov to pick up points on a nightly basis. If you do that, especially on Kuch and Point, I think you'll be making a lot of money going forward. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And once again, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Drop a comment below. How did you feel about tonight's win at home? A little too close for comfort. Is it excusable for that mental lapse to happen or things to break down the way they did in the third period against the Vancouver Canucks? I'm fine with it. I mean, they ended up winning the game. I feel like Stamkos doesn't score tonight. You kind of just go on business as usual, and this game isn't really as tight as it is at the final buzzer. So I'm willing to look the other way on this. Everybody played well tonight, especially goaltender Andrei Vasilevskiy, who has just been having a phenomenal season this year. A quiet season, really. I've spoken about it on the show, I think about a month or so ago, where I was saying, when are we going to see vintage Vasilevskiy? When are we going to see him start to get to elite level? And I think really, and I think I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago as well, that I think if there's any better time for him to really polish off his game, because I don't think he's not playing well this year. I think he's playing very well. Obviously, you want to have him dish out those dominant performances. You want to have him go out there on a nightly basis and there be the possibility of him have a shutout on any given night. And thus far, we have not seen that this year. He's still searching for his first shutout of the season. And, hopefully we could get one on this 5-game road trip. But like I said tonight, very good performance from him. 36 saves out of 40 shots. Very big save at the end there to if that shot would have went in, that would have counted, and then we would have been talking about overtime or potentially a shootout. So good for him, or not good for him, but good job by Vasilevskiy there to play to the final buzzer. Maybe sometimes goaltenders might get caught off guard as the seconds are trickling down to 3, 2, 1, and he definitely did not do that. And really what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks from Andrei Vasilevskiy is that, slowly but surely, he has been really starting to really bring it together. Even if the numbers aren't there, even if you don't feel like we're seeing that dominance that we normally see from him, I still think that he has been playing well enough to where you have to consider him at the elite level, at least since December. Now, as a whole on the season, there's still a lot of work to be done. But since the start of December, since December 1st, he's played 12 games. He's gone 9-3 in those games. His save percentage is .935. So listen, I mean, it can't get much better than that. I think really when you look at Andrei Vasilevskiy's last 12, which is really what we should be looking at, because you can't measure Vasilevskiy. As much as I would love to sit here and analyze the entirety of his season game by game, which obviously we don't have the time on this podcast for this particular episode to do so, I still think that if you, and I spoke about this even when he was kind of looking blasé out there, Vasilevskiy, the one thing you could rely on him is that what his ceiling is. You know what he's capable of. And really that is something that you have to hang your hat on time and time again with him, especially if he's not playing his best hockey or playing his best out there. And to put it in perspective, like I said, he's not really in terms of the course of the season thus far, he's not having those elite numbers. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that, and I spoke about this on the last episode, that Cooper hasn't really brought him out there night after night after night. He's really been careful with the chances that he's given Vasilevskiy. Not really any back-to-back nights there. Really, I think his first back-to-back games was the end of December there, and but still, to put it in perspective, he's still playing very well this year. He's seventh in the league in wins, which is 17. His save percentage, which, yeah, it's one of those things where save percentage, I don't really look at that. I look at goals against average and wins as that because, you might have certain goaltenders that don't face as many shots. Now, to put it in perspective, if you want to compare the save percentage, Linus Ullmark, who is the top goalie in the league, I think one of the front runners for the Vezina Trophy, the Boston Bruins goaltender, his save percentage is .938, where Vasily is 918. But the issue therein lies is the shots against. Now, Vasilevskiy has 842 shots faced this year, where Allmark is at 793. So there lies the disparity. So really, that's why I don't put a lot of stock into that. And then if you want to go a step further as to if you want to hang your hat on save percentage, look at the shots against for Shesterkin and Hellebuck, and Shesterkin, who Lightning fans who have both seen over the last couple of weeks. Hellebuck has 986 shots faced, where Shesterkin has 953, and they currently rank in the top 5 for save percentage in the league, and they are statistically the top goalies in the league if you're just looking at wins. But goals against average, I really look at that, and I really look at that as something that really you should be at least kind of a measuring stick. If you're looking at Vasilevskiy for his career or his past couple of seasons, where he's at now. His goals against, the best he's ever had was 221 in 2021, but the issue with that, he only played 42 games, so we're not even going to look at that. But if you want to look at the course of a full, 82 game season where he played a rough, probably more than 50% of those games, I would look at probably 16, 17, or even 18, 19, the year the Lightning were off the charts and Vasilevskiy won his Vezina. He played 53 games that year. Had a goals against average of 2.40. Vazzy's at 2.47 right now through 28 games. So still, if we're making our comparisons as to elite Vazzy level, the argument could be made. It really could be made, other than the shutouts there. The argument could very much be made. Shutouts he had that year were 6, by the way, in case you were wondering. You can make the argument that he is pretty much up to par with his definition of elite Vasilevskiy, vintage Vasilevskiy, if you will. So now to compare that to the rest of the NHL, a whole different ball game. I mean, like I said, Linus Ullmark, goaltender for Boston, playing pretty much out of his mind this year. Like I said, has a goals against average under 2 at the moment, and Shesterkin and Hellebuck are definitely in the mix for that Vezina Trophy finalist voting, I guess, right now. I mean, who knows how it'll shake up as the season progresses. But so far, so good from Vasilevskiy. Like I said, the one thing you could always rely on him is that he's going to get better. Once he's comfortable out there, he's definitely going to be able to just shut off all the outside noise and just get down to business. And we saw that tonight. Made a lot of key saves, and that's really what is helping this Lightning team play as well as they have, and especially by tonight, extending their 9-game home win streak. So hopefully we can see Vasilevskiy continue his play into mid-January. and especially into the late stages of January as we get into the early days of February. And hopefully, I would like to see a couple of shutouts. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if Vasilevskiy ends the season with no shutouts, but you like to see one just because the way he's been playing this year. I think that, and a lot of that also has to do with luck. Um, the I believe it was against the Blue Jackets in their second meeting of the season where Vasilevskiy was about, I want to say, 3 minutes away from having his first shutout, and then a goal was scored. But I think that having a goaltender having a shutout, especially after the season that he's been having thus far, which is, I feel like in a way that is kind of like a extra cherry on top, and that is the kind of thing where could potentially launch him into that upper echelon of the current stats in which the top goaltenders are in the league. I'm not saying he's not. He's still top five. If you're making a ranking right now, he's definitely top five. But the goal is for him to get that top three into trophy conversation territory. So hopefully the Lightning could reward him, help him out by getting his first shutout of the season in the coming weeks, especially on this upcoming 5-game road trip. So we'll keep tabs on that and hopefully wish it and speak it into existence. So we'll wrap things up talking about the schedule coming forward in just a bit. But first, I want to talk about another one of our sponsors, and that is Athletic Greens. Now, Athletic Greens, I love Athletic Greens. I start my morning with it every single day. One scoop into just a glass of water and you're set to go. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. And the best thing about it is that it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health. It's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It gives me a ton of energy. And the best part is that it improves my gut health. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take advantage, ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So wrapping things up on the show, taking a quick look at the Lightning's remaining schedule. Now, I'm very, my thing is that after going over the schedule and then also going over the standings, and I kind of realized this, and if you didn't catch it, uh, while I was recording the Locked On NHL national show podcast with my co-host Chris Masilli of Locked On Avalanche, I noticed that a lot of the teams, I kind of figured that these teams, a lot of these teams were mid-level that are coming up on the Lightning's schedule. But after re-examining things, I'm starting to think that these games are going to be a little bit more tougher than first anticipated. Now, coming up on the schedule, St. Louis. If you would have asked me a month and a half ago what I thought about that game, I would have said easy pickings. It seems as though after the Thanksgiving break, if you want to call that, St. Louis just got it together. And, at one point they were at the bottom of the list. We were having conversations in the beginning of November about them possibly starting to sell. And now look where they are. They're not too far out of the playoff picture in the West. And a team that continues to surprise everyone is the Seattle Kraken coming up on Martin Luther King Day. Just once again, I mean, at this point, what is there to say about the Seattle Kraken then, other than the fact that the Kraken are just turning into Vegas, but a year later, as we all know, Vegas went to the Stanley Cup final in their first year in existence. But Seattle, the way they play, they're tough. They're tough. They really are. And you're starting to see how well they drafted in the expansion draft, and it's really starting to pull together. top 3 in their division. Definitely going to be a tough matchup for any Western Conference team once the playoffs roll around. And then you got Vancouver, once again, like I earlier stated, next Wednesday, 10 o'clock start, which obviously for all of us on the East Coast is no fun. Uh, but you also have the next day, and that's because that's the first of a back-to-back, is Edmonton, a team that always, honestly, no matter where they are in the standings, a team that scares me because the Lightning, as we all know, draw a good number of penalties. Right now, they've been doing a good job of minimizing that. But we all know that eventually the other shoe is going to drop, and they're just going to have a game where they just lose it on the ice. And I just hope it's just my hope that the Lightning do not lose it in that game against Edmonton, because as we all know, Edmonton has one of the best power plays in the league. And just the idea of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl getting extra ice time together, with the Lightning being a man down, it keeps you up at night. So hopefully we don't have to see that. And then another team where I originally was thinking, this team is not what they were last year, but they've another team they've started to get it together, and that's the Calgary Flames, another really tough team. And anytime you go into Alberta, that's just going to be a tough game in that arena in Calgary. So regardless if it's the middle of January or it's the playoffs, it's going to be a tough schedule. That next week is going to be, other than Vancouver, which, Vancouver did play us tough tonight. So, I am optimistic that next Wednesday won't be as close. But at the same time, you know, Vancouver rolls out with the same intensity and energy that they did tonight. I can't see why we won't have another close one. And we could also say it was very close, like I say at the top of the show, that we could also attribute this close margin of victory very much to the fact that everyone was just trying to pass to Stamkos at the end of the game just so he could get 500 at home. So, maybe different circumstances out in Vancouver. We'll have to wait and see. And then it's kind of somewhat smooth sailings, and I mean that in the most sarcastic of ways, to end January, because we got Minnesota, Boston, and the Kings. So really, the league has done their best to set, and I'm sure the NHL did not set this up with any idea, but sarcastically saying probably one of the tougher schedules. If someone could find me a link, 'cause I'm very curious to the strength of schedule. Now, obviously, I know every team plays each other, but I'm curious if anyone out there, any of our listeners, any of the people that watch this show, can hit me up with a link, drop it in the comments below, because I want to see it. If there is a website out there that measures the strength of schedule for every NHL team. So I'm curious as to where the Lightning rank in that, because I would have to say at least the month of January alone would at least constitute them to be in the top, or at least close to the top 10, because that is definitely a tough schedule for sure. So once again, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the podcast. And like I said, if anybody could find a link to a website for that, I'll give you a shout out on the show. I want to see that, or just hit up my DM on Twitter, Danky Dank, DENKYD8NK, with that link. Would love to see where the Lightning rank in their strength of schedule. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk about the game on Saturday against the St. Louis Blues. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you next.